Hello, Chargers fans. Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. Yesterday, we just wrapped up our free agency mock simulation. So now I wanted to take it one step further and look at how the Chargers could address the remaining positions of need following our mock draft simulation. So if you have not seen it yet, you can go through and look at how we did the cap calculations, the guaranteed numbers, and all that sort of stuff, who we added, who we let go. But just for a quick recap, if you have not seen it, we retained Uchenna Nwosu and Mike Williams. Those are the two big names that we kept. Obviously, Ode Abushi, Dustin Hopkins, Overton, Parham on the tender, Guyton on the tender. They could do an extension. They could not tender them. We just did that to make it easy. Steven Anderson and Scott Questenberry were all kept. And then we added, here's the big names that we added. That's Akeem Hicks, the defensive tackle, the nose tackle, Sebastian Joseph Day, safety, Jerron Curse, right tackle, Morgan Moses. And then, of course, the all-purpose back wide receiver, Cordero Patterson. And then we did set $14 million aside for the 11 draft picks. And then, of course, emergency in-season cap. That's kind of what Arjun suggested that we set aside. So we did that. And a lot of people aren't really doing that. But, of course, it is important. They have 11 draft picks, and they're going to need some money during the season. Typically, teams need between $5 and $10 million for in-season, emergency things. I think Andre Roberts signed for 1.1 million or something like that in the middle of the season. So, yes, you do need money left over for those signings. And then, of course, the guys that are gone, Kaiser White is the big one, of course. I know people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense. He's their best linebacker. Guys, that's just what we're hearing, and that's the way it looks like it's going to go. Kaiser White could return, but it's currently a reach, as we've been saying and maintained this whole time. If I'd love to be wrong, I don't think I'm going to be wrong at this point, but, we'll see. We did cut Gabe Neighbors. We have designated Joshua Kelly for a post-June 1st cut. Basically, they're going to go through the process. They have Roundtree, and someone's going to battle it out. And I do think Roundtree ends up taking that job. And then Linval Joseph, we did not bring back. Justin Jones, we did not bring back. Justin Jackson, Andre Roberts was not brought back. I do think Andre Roberts could be brought back still, even with Cordero Patterson. If Patterson is just going to be your all-purpose weapon, let Andre Roberts focus on punt and kick returns and be an extra wide receiver. I think they could do that. Chris Harris Jr. is gone. Kyler Fackrell is gone. And then Jared Cook is gone. There's a couple other names, of course, that are gone. But those are sort of the notable ones. So the starting offense looks like this. It's generally a run it back look at the offense outside of upgrading at right tackle significantly with Morgan Moses. And I believe it was a 2-year deal for us. And then Cordero Patterson, another 2-year deal, sort of replacing Justin Jackson, but we hope to get a little bit more out of him than just that. So it's generally the same offense. I would like to upgrade this offense in the draft as well. But currently, pre-draft, this is where we're at with those two big additions. More additions on defense, the two big additions, Akeem Hicks and Sebastian Joseph Day. Those are the guys that have the biggest connection to the Chargers. As Steven alluded to, and as we kind of piece together, there's going to be some sort of change. You can watch the video. We didn't specify what the change was, but there's going to be some sort of coaching change that suggests that Akeem Hicks could be basically a priority target for them. And it makes sense anyway, like before this. But with that, I think everyone will be suggesting Akeem Hicks as like the favorite to be signed by the team. So wait for that. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it has happened, just not announced. And Sebastian Joseph Day, I think them investing a lot early on in these guys makes a ton of sense. Why not get it done? Sort of like an offensive line, makeover that they did last year. I mean, look at the difference between this offensive or last year's offensive line and this one, right? They brought in Slater, they brought in Filer, they brought in Lindsay, they brought in Abushi. They had Balaga, but obviously they didn't work out. But they had 4 new starters and spent a lot of draft capital or money on this offensive line. So I think the defensive line could take the same approach. And then, of course, in the secondary, we brought in Jerron Curse. That gives you like that safety, 3 slot corner, box safety, whatever you want, sort of thing there. So the remaining roster holes, I think, are what I want to address in the mock draft. So I know I kind of flew through that very quickly, but we spent 90 minutes on our free agency mock yesterday. So I just blew through that real quick. So the roster holes remaining, the ones that I want to focus on the most in the draft, are obviously slot corner. We currently do not have a true slot corner. It's Keemon Hall, maybe Tavon Campbell, but there's no real slot corner there. Now that is a bit of an asterisk because we do have Derwin James, Nasir Adderley, Jerron Curse, Mark Webb. Those guys can all work in and play and move throughout the defense, at least in the secondary, and also play slot corner. So we don't have a true slot corner there. But that doesn't mean we have nobody playing slot corner outside of Keemon Hall. We do have options there at slot corner. We saw Derwin James do that an entire game practically against the Dallas Cowboys. So anything's possible there. So edge 3 is a big one. I have a picture of Kyler Fackrell here. He's not returning. The Chargers are currently with Nwosu and Bosa, their starters from last year. And then Chris Rump, who was like, he's a year 3 sort of projection guy, year 4 maybe, but year 2, that's a lot to ask for him to be the true edge 3 after showing some good things last year, but not being particularly productive or effective as an edge, not as much as a Kyler Fackrell. And even with Fackrell, you want to upgrade over that. So edge 3 is a big one. Outside corner depth or starter there. That's kind of depends on what the Chargers want to do. So if Asante Samuel Jr. is going to kick inside and he's your slot corner, you now need a starter on the outside or whatever it is. I think the Chargers will let the draft come to them. And if they find someone on the outside or slot, that'll kind of dictate where someone like Asante Samuel Jr. moves. Of course, they could get a starting tight end as well. Donald Parham, I assume, is going to be okay. We're assuming that in the simulation. He might not be, and he might also not be their starting tight end to them, especially with the concussion history. They might want to go find a more movable receiving, true receiver kind of tight end and let Parham be that really, really solid tight end 1B or a really solid tight end 2, of course. And then, of course, we're all looking for yak players, more speed at wide receiver. Currently, Jalen Guyton on a very cheap deal or tender or whatever it is back. Josh Palmer, they obviously drafted, but there's still an asterisk there. And if I can upgrade in the draft at, speed at wide receiver or yards after the catch, I will. Whether it's depth, whether it's a starter, who knows? I'm just going to run through this mock draft and see what happens. Swing tackle competition, of course, all we have is Trey Pipkins, and that's fine. Like, I feel okay with him as a swing tackle right now based on what he showed in those 2 games. But you could bring someone else in if they have another tackle on the roster, kind of like when they had Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins. Find another guy day 3 just to be some competition. I'm okay with that. Currently, defensive tackle and nose tackle does not have a lot of depth. Right now, it's Jerry Tillery, Joe Gaziano, Akeem Hicks. That's not the best defensive tackle rotation, unfortunately. So I also will mention Jerry Tillery and Kenneth Murray are going to be the starters. Like, I don't know what to tell you. They are going to be the starters. Unfortunately, they do have that first round bias. The coaches love them. And I've heard there's no accountability, especially with someone like a Jerry Tillery. So yeah, Tillery's going to start no matter what you want, unless he gets hurt. Same with Kenneth Murray. So, but I do need to find defensive tackle depth in this draft and nose tackle depth. I think, I like Braden Fehoko a lot. I think he's a perfect nose tackle 2 right now, right behind Sebastian Joseph Day. And I think Forrest Merrill could develop as well. But if there's an opportunity presents itself, the Chargers have met with a certain nose tackle that has not been made public yet. So if he's there or if another guy presents himself later on, I'll go for that. They need a punter. I'm not going to draft a punter in the mock draft simulation. I don't think you can. And then, of course, they're going to need a quarterback 2/3, depending on how they feel about Easton 6. So I'm going to jump into this mock draft simulation right now with slot corner, edge 3, possibly outside corner depth or as a starter in mind, tight end in mind, and of course, finding some way to make this offense more explosive. So yes, a lot of the roster looks like right now that I kind of just did a run it back scenario, but I do think I added enough pieces where I can address maybe more valuable positions early on rather than go get a nose tackle or defensive tackle so early because I'm desperate for one, or even a right tackle. I think going after more premium positions like corner or edge in the draft is the way to go, and find those that right tackle, the defensive tackle, nose tackle in the free agency. I think that's the way to go. So I'm going to jump into the simulation. Let's see what we find, what we end up with. I'm going to run it once. If it's bad, it's bad. But if it's good, it's good. Let's find out. All right. So the rules for this mock draft, I'm not going to do any trades here. And I'm going to try to only talk about or select players that I have done some research on, done some homework on, watched film on. So there's someone in here that I just don't know anything about. And you're like, why did you take him there? I'm not going to. At some point when we do the mock drafts later on, I'll certainly be more well informed. But right now, I've mostly covered edge, offensive tackle, a tiny bit of corner, wide receiver, interior defensive line. So some guys like linebacker, tight end, running back, I won't be the most informed on those. So I'm most likely going to pass on some of those, even if you're screaming at the phone or your television or your computer that I should have taken someone else. So I'm going to try to do the best I can to make this something that I can speak on rather than just guess and pretend. So here we go. 7 rounds of the mock draft. Let's see what happens. Okay, so what I'm keeping in mind in this draft, right? Yards after the catch, speed wide receivers or players, I guess. I'm looking at slot corner. I'm looking at outside corner. I'm looking at edge. Right? There's a number of ways I can go here. So in terms of wide receivers and the speed, I think Jameson Williams is the obvious pick there. He seems to be there every single time that you do a mock draft here. So Jameson Williams would be a good selection there. I'm recording this before the combine, so I don't know either how he looks or how he tests or how, I don't even know if he's going to test, but I don't know how his medicals shake out is what I'm saying. So we'll see there. The edge guys that are there right now, George Karlaftis from Purdue seems to be the only guy of the big 5 or 6 that remains, depending on how you rank it right now. If I'm the Chargers, so Hutchinson and Thibodeau are definitely going to be gone. It seems like Jermaine Johnson's going to be gone, but some combination of Trayvon Walker, David Ojabo, and George Karlaftis from Purdue are all, one of them is going to be there, I feel like, at 17. Whether we take him or not, I'm not quite so sure. I do want to upgrade edge 3. Don't get me wrong. Karlaftis is super technical. I do like quite a bit about him. I think he's much further along as a pass rusher than someone like a David Ojabo or even Jermaine Johnson. But it's kind of, to me, it's going to depend on how he tests and how he looks, because I think he's technically sound. I just don't know if you want, I don't know if that's the outside linebacker type that Staley wants. And B, I don't know if you want like another technically sound sort of guy. I think that they would go with more like a toolsy sort of guy at this point. So like if Ojabo were there, I probably wouldn't hesitate. Karlaftis, I like him a lot. I might even rank him ahead of someone like Ojabo just because he's that much more refined. I just don't know if the Chargers would go that route. Tackle, obviously, we're okay with. I'm just curious. All 3 tackles are here now. The supposed big 3. Raymond's taking a big fall. Jordan Davis is there. We obviously do have that taken care of with Sebastian Joseph Day, but he is there, so that's worth keeping in mind. Trent McDuffie is there. Roger McCreary, Kyler Gordon. Those guys are there at corner. Safety, Daxton Hill. I'm hearing a lot of good things about him. I just haven't had a time to look at him. To me, at this point, while I do want to upgrade to edge 3, and I think Karlaftis would be a good player as a third edge, especially ahead of someone like Chris Rumph, who's more raw. I do think at this point, how can you not go with Trent McDuffie here? I think there's one play that McDuffie had, I believe it was in 2020. I watched Kaiir Elam first, then I watched McDuffie, and they're both, I think, in man coverage on a shallow crosser or like a drag or something. And Elam kind of tries to sift through the defense, but he kind of just jogs over and he doesn't end up making the tackle on the receiver. He's supposed to be trailing, I think, or something like that. McDuffie, I'll try to find this play if I do a McDuffie breakdown. McDuffie, I think it's 3rd and like 12, so he can keep everything in front of him, so a little bit easier. But he chases that wide receiver and just tackles him for like a 2-yard gain on almost the exact same play from left to right. McDuffie is the guy who just goes way down the field and makes the tackle and just shows me something there that Elam doesn't have. And that's why Elam's obviously not ranked so highly here. There's more things to that, of course. But I think at this point, if you're picking 17, right now, McDuffie is the 3rd highest rated player remaining. You could go Jameson Williams. I think you can find some guys later. To me, it's McDuffie. You kick Asante Samuel Jr. inside. I don't know if McDuffie's projected to play inside at all, but I do think McDuffie would be your outside guy. Now you have a true trio of corners that I think are excellent. A well-paid undrafted free agent who I think will have a bounce back year, a 2nd-round pick in Asante Samuel Jr., and then, of course, Trent McDuffie. So you have those 3 corners, Samuel Jr. in the slot. You have James, you have Adderley, you have Curse, you're developing Gilman and Webb. I think now you have hopefully, obviously we'll see how this pans out, but I think you hopefully have a complete secondary there. So I am going to go with Trent McDuffie. I know Brentley Weissman, who used to be a scout for the Chargers, is very high on him. I've done a tiny bit of homework on him, so I am comfortable taking him there, but I haven't put a final grade on him yet. But I do think he's a player worth taking, and I have been impressed so far. And everything you hear is that he's just going to absolutely show out at the combine. I think him and Gordon are both going to. So now we're in the 2nd round. We're at pick 48. For some reason, I always thought it was pick 49. So sorry if I've been saying the wrong thing this whole time. There's a couple routes you can go here. So wide receiver, someone like a John Mechie, like a Christian Watson, Calvin Austin, maybe a little bit too early, but Watson and Mechie are definitely going to be here in the 2nd round. Those are 2 targets to keep an eye on. The edge group, I love Ebiketie. I have not watched Pascal or Pascal, however you say his name, or Kingsley Enagbare. I have not watched him either, so I couldn't speak on those guys. So I'm going to pass. If I did not get someone like a Trent McDuffie early on, I would have gotten maybe like a Jalen Petre. That's how you say his name, from Baylor, a guy who can play slot corner a lot. Honestly, it's tempting just to take him because he's so talented, but that'd be a very crowded DB room. And we're still looking for that edge player. And if you look at like Brendan Thorne's true sack rate, all the best edge guys are like the first, like definitely first round you take them, maybe second round. Like you have to take an edge player early for them to be the best. To me, based on what I know about maybe what I can get later on, hopefully, I am a huge Ebiketie fan. I think he's extremely underrated. I know, I think Daniel Jeremiah has him in top 50, if I'm not mistaken. I think at like 42. I think Ebiketie's his 42nd ranked prospect. TD also has him at 73. I think he's extremely underrated. A guy who has solid bend. Some people have said he's the best bender in the class. Maybe, I don't know. Guy who can win inside and outside. I think he's a guy who loves to win inside, unlike anybody else that I've seen in this group, in this pass rusher group, honestly. So these other two guys ahead of him, or like someone like Sanders, Drake Jackson, maybe they're better. I don't quite know. But Ebiketie is a flashy guy who came in pretty solid. I think top 10 in our edge rusher composite rankings for stats on the year. Didn't do a whole lot at Toledo, went to Penn State and just exploded for them. I think he's someone you'd love to have as a third rusher. If Nwosu and Bosa are your starters, I think Ebiketie as your edge makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to go there with Arnold Ebiketie. Just look at other guys. So obviously we took care of corners. So that's not really a thing for us right now. Daniel Falele is going to be here, but we're going to take care of right tackle. I think Christian Watson is definitely an intriguing player, but with Mike Williams back, I don't see a reason to have added him. So I'm going to go with Ebiketie here. I'm a huge fan of him. He's definitely going to make my top 8 of edge rushers. I think there's a lot of good edge rushers early on. So I think he'll make my top 7 or 8 for sure. So currently, I went into this needing either a slot corner or an outside corner or outside corner depth as well. And so I think I did that with Trent McDuffie. So we got that taken care of. We got Arnold Ebiketie as our third edge rusher. I think I'm very happy with that. I think him and Rumph developing together is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic way to go for this defense. To this point, you can kind of have a little bit more fun with it. So, okay. Obviously, we're taking the quarterback here. This is kind of the point where I'd start looking at wide receiver. And to me, it's definitely a different kind of player. But I think when you have Josh Palmer, you don't have to look for some of those bigger, more possession guys. At this point, you want someone who's scheme independent, right? Who can do whatever, right? Against any defense. You just get him the ball and he goes. And a guy who can contribute with speed, with quickness in the slot, maybe even outside. I am a huge Calvin Austin fan. And it sounds like people are saying he's going to be the fastest guy at the combine. So yes, he's undersized, but if you watch him at the Senior Bowl, there's not a person that could touch this guy. Someone like Kyle Phillips, I'm curious where he fell here. So he's 93rd on their board. I have not watched Sky Moore, so I couldn't tell you much about him. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think there's potential there, but if you want someone who's like a sure receiver right out of the gate, there's no one better than Calvin Austin on this current list right now. You could look for size there, but again, you have your power forward slot guy in Palmer. You do have just a single burner street guy in Guyton. Austin brings something very different and unique. If I would have been tempted to go with Mechie in the second round, but I couldn't pass on Ebiketie. But I think going, more premium positions first and then getting someone like Calvin Austin in the third round is a fantastic way to go. You get the guy, again, who's supposed to be the fastest dude at the combine, who's a 9-time state champion high school track runner. I forget exactly what he ran. It shows this dude has played on the outside, is a strong blocker. He blocked for other receivers. The 6'2" guys behind him were getting wide receiver screens behind his blocking. That's how tough this dude is. I love Calvin Austin, so I'm going to take him here. So right now, my first 3 picks are Trent McDuffie, Arnold Ebiketie, and Calvin Austin from Memphis. I think at this point, I feel like I've solidified everything that I needed, outside of some depth, of course. But you need your corner, either a starter on the outside or the inside. McDuffie's for that. Needed an edge 3. Arnold Ebiketie is right there. Calvin Austin gives you your speed, your yak, whatever. You put the ball in his hands, bye, he's gone. I think he's going to be a fantastic player in whatever offense he goes to. Hopefully the quarterback is half decent. So let's see who's remaining here. Okay. So I will say my big blind spot is going to be tight end. So people that are asking for a tight end in the 4th round here. I'm going to be a little bit blind spotted on that one. So I'm going to try to avoid taking a tight end, even though I do think there are, sorry, I'm not going to avoid taking a tight end. I'm going to avoid talking about tight ends because I don't know them very well. There is one guy, though, I do want to take, and it just showed on here that I think the Chargers are interested in. Well, they are. The Chargers have met with Chiggy Okonkwo. Hopefully I'm saying that right. From Maryland. He's a guy that's maybe not the most yak sort of guy, but I think he is like number 1 or 2 in contested catch rate for tight ends in this class among the top tight ends. So him, a guy the Chargers have met with, and that's why I'm going to go with him. Have not watched him, but because the Chargers have met with him, and because the Chargers are really, really into taking players that they've met with before, I think they took 4 Senior Bowl guys that they met with last year. So someone like Okonkwo, how can you pass him up at this point? I can kind of have fun with whatever I want because I've filled, honestly, my 3 biggest needs outside of maybe finding a more defensive tackle type. Who is available for interior defensive line? So this is definitely going to be my blind spot as well. I don't have a whole lot of information on like a Ridgeway. I hear good things about him. Otito Ogbonia from UCLA. Some of these guys at the Senior Bowl really, really did show out. But I do think there's somebody later that I'd like to go to. I'm probably gonna have a problem filling the defensive tackle at this point because I don't know some of these guys. But you can't be good at everything. So at this point, I am going to go with a tight end. I'm going to go with the player that they have met with at a generally good spot for him, I think, in the 4th round. Obviously, they've taken a tight end in the 4th round before. They just did it last year with McKitty. Now they go with more of a receiving weapon. Chigoziem Okonkwo or Chiggy Okonkwo. I'm going to go with him from Maryland. So I did find he's not a starting tight end. I don't imagine that they'll assume he's a starting tight end, but I think you don't really need that when you have Parham, Anderson, McKitty, hopefully developing into more of a receiving weapon. So I think just adding another guy to the mix to have a very strong tight end room is the way to go. And listen, at this point, I have Mike Williams, I have Keenan Allen, I have Calvin Austin, I have Josh Palmer, I have Jalen Guyton. I have a good mix of guys. But then, Donald Parham, Steven Anderson. So I think you don't need to go crazy and reach for a tight end. Okay. Who do I take at this point? Who is left? Okay. Tyler's definitely going. He's getting into his weak spots here because I have not done a whole lot of homework on the guys that are later in the draft right now. We're at pick 159. Who is available? If Mike Williams didn't return, I'd be interested in someone like a Romeo Dubs from Nevada. He's literally like 4 verts special. If you watch him, he just catches verts like that's all he does. Not really, but it seems to be all he does because that's all they kind of asked him to do in that offense. And he was really good at it. So why not? I am definitely at a loss right here in terms of the guys that I could take because I have not studied these guys. So I could totally lie and go with somebody. I want to try not to, but I think at this point I'm a little bit stuck. So I'm going to pretend that the Chargers do need an interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle type. I don't know who Matt Henningsen is. Does he play defensive tackle? A 5 tech and a 3-4 defense. Rotational 3-4 defensive end, gap pretender. All right. You know what? I'm just going to go with him. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to solve my defensive tackle rotation issues with Matt Henningsen from Wisconsin. I'm sorry I've not done homework on him. But then again, I think most of us at this point have not done homework on all these guys, unless you're counting YouTube as homework, and that's not homework. So I'm going to go with him. It's a bit of a reach. It's a bit of a stretch because I don't know who he is, but I needed to find somebody there. And I don't know anybody else in TDN's range right now. So unfortunately, I'm going to do a slight reach and go with him. In the 5th round, at least. Okay, so now we are here in the 6th round at pick 193. A couple of different ways we could go here. I think that there's a player that is certainly being projected way too low. So I want to try to make it a little bit more realistic. See if I can go all the way down to him here. Where is he? I guess I can make this easier on myself and just go with the interior defensive line. Okay, so Neil Farrell from LSU. I think there's obviously an LSU connection there with Braden Fajoko. He's a player that I think showed out at the Senior Bowl. I think has good film. And so I'm very comfortable taking him. I know he's ranked 248. I don't buy it that he's actually the 248, the best player here. I know he doesn't have the most, he's not like a premium position, right? Nose tackle isn't exactly the most premium position, but I think you want more bodies there. And I expect Fajoko to pan out as the nose tackle too. But at this point in the 6th round, I'm not saying that Farrell's a dart throw, but you're in day 3. So you want some guys who can definitely contribute there. So I'm going to go with Neil Farrell there from LSU. It does seem like a reach on TDN's board. I don't believe at all it is actually a reach in the actual draft. I think he'll go, maybe 5th round. Shelvin went 4th round, if I'm not mistaken. So, all right, picking in the 6th round again. Do they have an extra 6th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says I'm still in round 6. Do they have an extra 6th? I'm so confused. Okay, so I do want to get to some of the players that I know that they have met with. Let's talk about some of the players they've met with. So, where is he? Did Gene D-Lance already go? That's a surprise. Okay, so D-Lance already went, so never mind. Some of the safeties they've met with are Verone McKinley, right, from Oregon, Joey Blount from Virginia, and I believe a Caleb Evans already went in the draft. Okay, now there's a safety later on that I probably will take that has met with them. I think it is still worth finding a way to add special teams help versatility to your secondary. And so I think going to someone who they've met with, like a Verone McKinley, is not a bad option there. Let's see who else is available. Who else have they met with? I do know of some guys that they've met with, so I might just finish this mock draft out. Okay, you know what? I want to find an upgrade over Jalen Guyton. And I think Tyquan Thornton is a fantastic way to go there. They've called him, or it's not like they, Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder talked about him as like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's a little bit more physical. I haven't watched MVS enough to say whether Thornton is more or less physical than MVS, but Thornton is a fantastic deep threat, and he is also very good at securing the football and ensuring that your quarterback completes the pass. And he basically is great at plucking the football out of the air, protecting down the sideline, back shoulder fades, whatever it has to be. He's very good at that. He's only kind of a deep threat, but I think he's better than Jalen Guyton, or he could be better than Jalen Guyton as a deep threat, but with better hands. And I think that's where you want to upgrade over Guyton. Again, Guyton could be brought back on a very cheap, 1-year deal or whatever, or the tender. I don't know what they end up doing, but I do think that doesn't mean his job is safe. So I'm going to go load up a little bit more with Tyquan Thornton here. And I feel very good about that. And then later, I'm going to see if I can find a little bit more safety help just to help out here. There's another guy I want to pick in just a second. Okay, so one of the things that I don't remember if I talked about in the what was left in our roster to fill, I do think that the interior offensive line does need to get one more body in there as a dart throw. I'm not saying Hymas is going to be the backup for sure, but I do think you want to add one more guy, and a guy that I think is really low on here, and that's why I'm taking him, is Luke Fortner, the interior offensive lineman from Kentucky. I thought he played pretty well at the Senior Bowl and in those one-on-one reps. He's a guy that some people are a lot higher on, I think, on social media. Than TDN's board here, obviously. Who was it that was very high on him? Crud. It's going to annoy me. A couple of people, very well-known people and respected people, were very high on someone like a Luke Fortner. I think just based on what he looked like at the Senior Bowl, I think he's a fantastic add. A guy who can play left guard, center, or right guard. I do have them bringing back Scott Quessenberry in our mock free agency sim, but I think Fortner as another guy to bring in. Listen, we're in the 7th round, so you're kind of just throwing darts here at a dartboard. But I think bringing in someone like Fortner to compete along the interior, maybe to develop along the interior. If Quessenberry is back, maybe it's on a 1-year deal. Maybe he competes with someone like Fortner, and Fortner you can have for many more years. So I'm going to go with him here. I'm holding off on the secondary help for right now. They do have 5 edge rushers. I think having Ebiketie over Fackrell is acceptable. I obviously know more about Fackrell, but I think Ebiketie has a higher ceiling, of course. Okay, so at this point, I'm at 252. The Chargers have three picks to close this out. So basically, I'm just picking dudes because I feel like picking dudes, and I'm just gonna go with guys that they've met with. So Verone McKinley is a safety that they have met with. Very versatile player for Oregon, of course. Seems like people are very high on him. I think they've met with him twice, so there's definitely something there. Another DB they met with twice was Asante Samuel Jr. last year, so you never know here. At this point, I'm just doing dart throw sort of things. I do know some other guys they've met with. They've met with Jareth Stearns. I did post that on my Twitter account. I'm going to actually have an interview with him in a couple of days, so look out for that. They've met with Jareth Stearns. Would they had Jareth Stearns to the roster? I think at this point they wouldn't add him to the roster, although I certainly wouldn't be opposed. And also we could be looking at punters here, but we can't draft punters, so can't do that. Joey Blount they've met with, so I could talk about him, or I could add him. Oh wow, Barno's all the way down here. That's a surprise. I thought the people liked Barno more. A couple of guys I'm going to go with. Okay, so there's a Stevens Utah guy. Let me go down a little bit here. I don't want to miss him. Hopefully, I haven't missed him yet. Ryder Anderson, I interviewed. Panashuk is super freaking productive. Him down here is crazy because he has like the fifth best, he's like the fifth most productive edge rusher in college football last season. So him being down here is fascinating. But he's more of a 4-3 guy, so I don't think they would take him here. Am I going insane? So I have 2 picks left. Let's go with guys that they've met with. All right, fine. Because they've met with him, I'm going to go with Jarrett Stearns. I probably just passed him, didn't I? Where are you, Stearns? Where are you, Chris? There you are. Okay, so I'm going to go with Jarrett Stearns. You can add him as a sort of gadget guy. If Joe Reed's not working out, congratulations, you have Jarrett Stearns. Like hyper productive. Like he had 1,100 yards after the catch. He's not going to go to the combine, so we're waiting for his pro day to see how he tests. Seemed like he did really good things at the Shrine Bowl, and they've met with him. Several scouts did meet with Jarrett Stearns. That's a little insider info before I meet with him. So I think there's something there. So I'm going to go with Jarrett Stearns. And last but not least, I do think they need some extra help at edge rusher just to find another body to make it work. So I do know someone else that they've met with, and that is Luigi Villain, the edge rusher from Wake Forest. I'm going to go with him. I could also go with Uriah Leatawa. That's the edge rusher / defensive lineman that they also have met with from BYU. He's from Compton, California. He is a Chargers fan. I could see them going there, but I don't think he fits exactly what they want. I think they go more for the upside of someone like Luigi Villain. Villain was super productive. He was at Michigan, and I believe he was banged up for the 2 years that he was there. He was able to transfer, that he played, and then he transferred to Wake Forest and had a huge year for himself, at least. I think it was like 34 pressures, 9 sacks, 18 run stops, and 3 forced fumbles, something like that. He had a very, very good year. He's going to be your rotational, developmental edge rusher piece. So I'm going to go with Luigi Villain there and call it a draft. Man, that is hard finding guys in the 7th round when you have so many picks. But also it's kind of fun. You get to add some of these guys to it. So I think at this point, I've filled the needs that the Chargers had as starters. And then I just found, some of the best depth guys that I possibly could. Some that they maybe need, some that just beat out future guys or current guys, whatever. So Trent Mcduffie, he's going to be a starter. Arnold Ebiketie is going to be your edge 3. Calvin Austin is going to work in, I think, as your wide receiver 4/5. So your receiver room would look like, it would be Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer. Honestly, I would say Calvin Austin, then Jalen Guyton, then Tyquan Thornton. I think Thornton and Guyton are basically just battling it out at this point. If it's a special teams value thing, I don't know what Thornton could offer. Honestly, Calvin Austin at that point is probably the guy I would give special team stuff to. So it's kind of just a battle for those guys. The battle of the day, undrafted free agent versus day 3 pick, 6th round pick. I don't really care. Just pick somebody and find someone you can have for a little bit cheaper. I went with the guys that they've met with at tight end. So Chiggy Okonkwo from Maryland, Verone McKinley they've met with, Jarrett Stearns they've met with, Luigi Villain they've met with from Wake Forest. So, whether they're actually the picks there, I don't know. But I think picking someone there that they've met with works out. I did select someone here that they have met with that is not public yet. Spoiler, I guess. I don't know if that's ever going to come out. I know it's happened. I've asked for permission. I do not have permission to talk about it, so I'm not going to mention it. But there is someone between 17 and 255 here, or it's one of those, that the Chargers have met with. I have selected that person specifically because they've met with him. So that's something. I feel good about this. I think the Chargers they have, they have 4 new starters. If Curtis is a starter to you, then they have 4 new starters on defense. They have Trent McDuffie, who I've selected here. They have Akeem Hicks. They have Sebastian Joseph Day. And they have Jaron Curse as their new starters. You've bolstered your secondary. You've definitely bolstered your front, your defensive tackle and nose tackle group. I'm a little worried about the defensive tackle spot at this point. I don't know anything about Henningsen, so I couldn't tell you whether that's like officially taken care of or not. But as we've seen, Jerry Tillery plays like 85% of the snaps per game, unfortunately. So, I mean, who else is going to, you're not going to spend a super early pick on someone if Jerry Tillery is just the starter the whole rest of the way. So I'm a little bit worried about the defensive tackle rotation, but I think someone like Nero, going back to back with Henningsen and then Farrell, you have Fehoko, who kind of can play that split hybrid Covington sort of role. You have Hicks, you have Joseph Day. I think one of those guys, not like the greatest injury history between the two starters that I signed. So I think going with two interior defensive linemen, even if they're not projected to be starters, going with two to bolster with Fehoko, I think it's a really good way to go. I feel good about this. You can only run through this mock draft once, otherwise it becomes a whole new mock draft. So there are definitely some things that I am missing here. Obviously, a quarterback, a punter. I'd like more corner depth, I think, but at this point, you do have 3 starters at corner. Campbell's your 4th corner, and you also have plenty of safeties to work with here. Guys who have worked in the slot, some outside, and of course, you have your already starting safeties who are very good there. So I'm okay with this. Like if they went into the season with this group, I think the main holes are taken care of. I think there's enough depth here. I think they become a more exciting offense without going crazy expensive. I mean, at this point, they can't go crazy expensive, right? They go with Mike Williams. There's really no money left over. They got to find guys in the draft. So Calvin Austin, explosive slot receiver, a receiving tight end, of course, an explosive deep threat in Tyquan Thornton. I think you find guys, and a yak guy like Jarrett Stearns. So we have a yak guy in Stearns, a sort of yak guy, but also just a fast freaking slot receiver in Austin, receiving tight end, a burner in Thornton. I think now you found guys at, the screen level, intermediate level, slot, as a middle of the field tight end, and as a burner. I think you found, or I found, I don't know if Telesco will do this, guys at different levels to come in and compete and just what's the word I'm looking for? Inject some life into this offense. So what do you guys think? Is my team complete? What am I missing? We do have some money left over from emergency stuff as well. So without trading, that's what I ended up with. Let me know what you guys think of this group. Does it suck? Is it great? I don't know. Guys, take care. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you like this no one's watching anymore. If you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, please. I love comments. I'll always respond to the comments. So let me know in the comment section below what you think. Guys, take care. As always, bolt up.